Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Please
Good
join
evening,
the
ma'am.
class quickly,
Good
everyone.
evening, ma'am.
Very good evening, class. Please keep your mic on mute, everyone. Are you able to view the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Amazing. Today I have 68 participants in my class. Very good. All right. Okay. So now we'll try and finish. We'll finish the lesson today, and after that we'll do some exercises for this lesson. And apart from that, if you have any doubts or queries, you can, if you have noted them down in your notebook, we can discuss them today. So the further 2 more classes we have, children, today we will cover only the history lesson. We'll try and revise this lesson today. In the next class, I will be uh, revising the geography lesson with you, geography lesson number 1. And the last class, we will cover civics lesson number 1. Okay, because for your EVA 1, probably in June 2nd week, your evaluation 1 exams will begin. Okay, so only these 3 lessons will be coming. Lesson number 2 of history in your exams, in written exams, and your civics lesson 1 and geography lesson 1. So today I'm going to finish this lesson. We were on the new reforms which were made by the British East India Company in India, eventually after acquiring almost 63% of the territory, the entire subcontinent they were able to acquire, and they were ruling around a population of 78% of the total population. They were ruling by the year 1857. Okay, so during this time, during the late 19th century, they started making a few reforms in India. In the as we have already discussed in the previous class, they established the Supreme Court. They also established the new system of judiciary. Especially Warren Hastings was one of the governors who paid heed to the new setting up a new judicial system, wherein they had a criminal code and a civil court, which was known as the Faujdari Adalat, and the other one was Diwani Adalat. Okay, so these two we have discussed, and also establishments of courts. And initially there were few they were hiring Indian Brahmins and Pandits and the Qazis for making to interpret the new laws that they were making for ruling the Indian population. So now and after that we have also discussed about what were the changes they brought in the army. Apart from the judicial system, what other and administration, what changes they brought in the company's army. Any doubts here, children, for this last part of the lesson?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No, ma'am.
Good. All right. Now, in the company's army, they had many trained soldiers. Especially, they were training the Indian population only as soldiers. Okay, they had the Savars who were trained as soldiers on the horseback. They had the infantry, that is the pedal or foot, and soldiers. And with the changing times, there was a change in technology also. With the coming of the daggers and the guns, they wanted strict discipline in the army also. So they started training the Indian soldiers on the British lines, on the new ways of discipline was being implemented in the Indian army, and mostly Indians were trained for that. Okay, and then there was training in archery and also how to use the sword initially, but later on with the new technology, when they started using the muskets and the matchlock, they started training the Indian soldiers in that also. And they termed the Indian soldiers as the Sipahi, or they also called it as the Sepoy army. And as the warfare technology changed from the 1820s, the cavalry requirement of the company's army declined. The reason for this change was that because of the coming of the new technology, of the coming of the muskets and the matchlocks. What was a musket? Musket was a very heavy gun. It was used by the infantry soldiers. Infantry means the pedal soldiers who are not on the horseback. Okay, so they were using these heavy guns. And what was a matchlock? Matchlock was an early typical type of a gun in which a powder was ignited by using a matchstick. Okay, so this was a change in the new technology, and they started training their Indian soldiers in using these guns and muskets and matchlocks. Okay, apart from that, in the early 19th century, the British began to develop a uniform military culture, which means that the army, the soldiers have to wear a certain uniform. You must have seen in many of the TV serials also. If you have any movies, if you have watched, you must have seen how the British army used to wear that red color uniform was there for the British soldiers. Even the Indian soldiers were supposed to wear that. Okay, and soldiers were increasingly subject to European style training, which means there was a proper drill and discipline that regulated their life far more than before. Now here, children, in this picture, you can see a Savar of Bengal in the service of company, painted by an unknown Indian artist in the year 1780. Many students are still very late. They are joining late. Your class was going on before I started this class, children, because many students are getting admitted now. There are around 10
Ma'am,
students.
it was science lecture. It ended at 7:40.
But please tell your teacher also to finish fast, because you have to attend another class. You don't get a time break in between. So better you finish your previous lecture on time so that you can join my class quickly. Here I can see 17, 18 more students are joining.
Ma'am, Trupti ma'am ended the lecture on time.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, it's
It
okay.
was
You
on
can
time.
inform that, ma'am, can you please finish this fast, because we don't get a break for our next class. 15 minutes break usually you get, children. So please inform ma'am that, ma'am, please wind up fast so that we have another class quickly after that. Okay, so next time you can do that. All right, so now here, as you can see in this picture, all the images in your lessons, I am repeating again, are important because you can get a question based on an image from your lesson. So here, if you may get a question on what does this describe this picture. Okay, this kind of a question you may get. So you in one sentence you can explain that it was a Savar in Bengal in the service of the company. Okay, in the year 1780. And after the battles with the Marathas and the Mysore rulers, the company realized the importance of strengthening its cavalry force. Why? Because the Marathas and the Mysore, as I was telling you earlier, these two empires and the kingdoms were far more powerful and difficult to control under the subsidiary alliance. Apart from that, there were kingdoms, especially Afghanistan and Punjab was also controlled by military force. You already are aware about it. Okay, Afghanistan. Why? Because at that time, I explained in the last class, they had fear from the Russians that they may acquire the Indian territories in the northwestern frontiers. So they also tried to control the Baluchistan and the Pakistan area also, and they brought it under their control, waging a series of, yes beta. If you want to say anything, please raise your hand and then speak, beta. Okay. All right. Now here, I have already explained what were the new changes in the army. This may come as a separate question, so this part is also very important. What new changes were brought in the new army? New technology was being used. Muskets and matchlocks were being used by the soldiers. There was strict training and drill and discipline that was regulated in the soldiers' lives also. But then there was a problem here, that often this created problems among the Indian soldiers. Why? Because in certain things they had to forget about their religion and caste. To give you a very good example, you already know in the case of revolt of 1857, that the soldiers had to, for shooting from the muskets and these matchlock guns, they had to chew off the cartridges. There was a layer of the cows or pigs fat which was covered. The cartridge used to get covered with it. They had to chew it off, and then load the gun with that cartridge, and then only they could fire. So this affected their religious sentiments at that time, and that made them very angry, which sparked off the revolt of 1857 in Barakpur in West Bengal, and eventually the revolt spread all across India. During that time, Britishers did not know that they need to control the entire territory, they need to strengthen their army. But then after the revolt of 1857, they made even more severe and further changes, which you will be learning in the upcoming lesson. In lesson number 5, you will be learning that. Okay, so now I'll quickly conclude this lesson here. So what was the change? To conclude this particular lesson, we already know that East India Company initially came to India just to trade with India and for commercial purpose, but eventually it got transformed from a trading company to a territorial colonial power. Okay, the arrival of new steam technology. What do you mean by steam technology here? The arrival of the new steam technology in the early 19th century also aided this process. Early 19th century, children, 1773 is the year when James Watt, he invented what? What did James Watt
Steam
invent?
engine.
Steam engine. So steam engine was not only used in the railways or establishing factories in Europe and in
Coal
India.
mine.
It was also used for running the ships, children. So when earlier they were traveling from Europe to India, it took them around 6 to 8 months for them to come to India. So that was a very long period of time. But with the invention of the steam technology, with the steam engine, this journey, the time of the journey was far reduced to many couple of months were reduced with that. So steam technology was very useful for them because steamships reduced the journey time to 3 weeks, enabling more Britishers and their families to come to a far off country like India. You can see it's mentioned here 3 weeks. Just in a span of 3 weeks, the ships would run so fast that they could easily reach countries like India through the seas and the oceans. Okay, so by 1857, the company came to exercise direct rule over about 63% of territory and 78% of the population of the Indian subcontinent. All these things are very important. They may come as subjective or objective questions, children. So please read your lessons very carefully. Okay, you may get a question, how much percentage of territory the British were able to acquire by 1857? How much percent of population they were ruling? Combined with its indirect influence on the remaining territory and population of the country, the East India Company had virtually the whole of India under its control. But children, after 1857, even the rest of the territory very easily came under the direct rule of the British. So this leads us to the end of this particular lesson, and let's do one quick exercise on whatever we have covered so far. You all are ready, children?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And then we'll watch a video also. All question answers I have given you. Map work also we have already completed. I have given you time till 3rd of June for submissions of all your history question answers. Most of you have already submitted your geography and civics, CW, HW, whatever activity. Most of you have already submitted, but still I'm giving you time till 3rd of June. The remaining work you can submit by 3rd of June, beta. Because next month your exams are starting. I want you to finish your work fast and start learning your question answers also. So no more question answers also. Let's just quickly do this exercise. Yes.
Ma'am, do we have to do the map work in map book?
You can do that, no problem. There is no issue. Suppose if you want to, if you do your map work, you just complete all the questions that we have asked. Do the markings and then just click a photo and add in your this thing, in your assignments in your drive. And the most beneficial part for social science is that we have already made our folders. So in case if you have done your CW, any written work in different notebooks, because many students don't have new notebooks, they have used old notebooks. So better to save all your CW, HW in the drive so that you can easily access your work and you can easily print it, take a print out when exams are there. It will be very easy for you to learn the answers in case if you don't have your notebooks now, and sometimes you misplace your notebooks. So better to keep your work safe on the drive. Okay, and there will be objective questions very soon. We will give you the date for EVA1, and also we will let you know how the questions, what kind of questions will be coming, the proper format of question paper, how the questions paper will be there, what type of questions will be asked. We will be giving you very soon. Okay, so start preparing for your exams also, children, if you don't know so far. And social science is vast, so I'm requesting all of you to start preparing for your exams now. Okay, all right.
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, what will be the means mode of giving exam? Like you take test on Google Classroom. So how will we have to give the
You
exam?
will get to know, Aditi, you will get to know, beta. What will happen is, most probably we are going to use the school ERP system. The school ERP system will be used for conducting the evaluations. This is the information which I have so far now for all of you. So online only the exams will be conducted because students cannot come to school. So of course EVAs will be there, exams will be there, and online mode we are going to take. Okay, and just like I have taken it on Google Form, subjective questions also, you should have a good speed in typing also, so that you can type your answers for subjective questions. Map work also, we will be asking questions. Don't think that drawing tests won't be taken. So better you, if any diagrams, not only for social science, but like for, making a flow chart or making a diagram for your any other subject for maths also, like if you're writing anything, and the exam will be there in June for you all. That will be the EVA1. And for social science, we've already finished our syllabus. Lesson number 1 of civics and geography, and history lesson number 2. Lesson number 1, history is was an activity lesson, so it won't be coming in your exams. So in case if you want to note this down, you can write it. Okay, all right. So now the first question here is, the East India Company was transformed from a trading company into a
Territorial colonial power.
territorial colonial power.
Colonial power.
Next question is, no, only one student will answer. I will ask one student and only that student will answer. Okay, the first Governor General of India was? Omkar, answer the question.
Warren Hastings.
Robert Clive.
Warren Hastings. Very good. The first Governor General was Warren Hastings. In which year he became the Governor General? Which year? You remember the Battle of Buxar and Plassey.
1764.
No, 1764 it was Robert Clive.
1773.
1773 is the year when he became the Governor General of India. Okay, very good. All right, now we'll go to the next question. Still, many students are trying to get admitted to this class very late. All right, next is next question is, men on horses are called
Savars.
Savars.
This was very easy. Next question is, before wielding the magic wand in India, Gandhiji practiced satyagraha in? This is something
South Africa.
South Africa.
Africa.
Very good. You already
South
know.
Africa.
He was a lawyer and he stayed in South Africa before he came to India. All right. Next question is, the slave trade in South Africa was started by the
British. French or British.
No.
Portuguese.
Dutch.
It was the Dutch. Initially, it was a Dutch. Remember when I was teaching you about explaining you about Tipu Sultan and his kingdom and how he was influenced by the French. It was a French also, of course, but the beginning was done by the Dutch. It is mentioned in your book. Okay. Next question. The Sardar Nizamat Adalat was set up in? We have just covered this part.
Awadh.
No, no.
Satara.
It is Adalat. Remember, it is a court. It is a
Bengal.
supreme
Bengal.
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 Very good. It was established in Bengal. What was the purpose of the Sardar Nizamat Adalat? Why did
And to
they
manage law and order.
No. Initially, if you want to, file any kind of a new case, so for any hearings initially, this particular court was set up in Bengal. You already know which three main presidencies were there. I've already explained.
Bengal, Madras.
Third was Bombay.
Bombay.
And Bengal was their first territory. Remember, children, Bengal was the first territory the British East India
Yes, ma'am.
Company acquired. So the Sardar Nizam Adalat was set up in Bengal. Okay. All right. Next question is: the British established a Supreme Court at Calcutta in which year?
1773.
Very good. It was 1773 was the year. Warren Hastings, remember, he became the Governor General. Okay, and the Regulatory Act was also enacted during this time. Yeah, Regulatory Act. We will be explaining all these in further great detail in the upcoming lessons also, children. The same thing will be continued, and different parts of the society we will study. What the countryside was like during that time. What was the life of the common man. Even you will, in the upcoming lessons, you will learn about how the architecture was there in Delhi and in surrounding areas. So all parts of life will be covered in your history this year, Indian history. Okay. Next question is: Qazi means a. Again, there's an error here. Two options are same. Qazi.
Judge.
He was a judge. Now I have a question about the Qazi. What did this Qazi do? Where was he appointed? See, you had the Hindu Pandits who were doing the interpretation, Hindu Pandits, and
the answer is judge. Answer is judge.
the answer
Answer
is
is
judge.
judge.
I know the answer is judge, but my question is
Mufti.
something.
I mean,
Where
Diwani
was-
Adalat.
I mean
He was-
Mufti.
He was Mufti, and the Hindu Brahmins were interpreting the new laws that the British were the foreign Hastings and other Britishers were they were starting new laws. They were making new laws. So interpretation was done by the Mufti and the Hindu Brahmins. But what was the role of the Qazi?
To judge the case.
To judge the case, and here at that particular time it was mainly in the criminal court, in the Faujdari Adalat, if you remember, children, not in the Diwani. Diwani was controlled by the British, but here in the criminal court, you remember the court was divided into Faujdari Adalat and Diwani Adalat. So when we're talking about the Faujdari Adalat, at that particular time the Britishers were not controlling the Faujdari Adalat immediately. At that time, Qazi was appointed to give the justice, to judge the criminal cases. Okay, so they were just doing the monitoring. They were not being there themselves on these positions. So that was the role of the Qazi as a judge. Next question. Okay, we are done with this exercise. Now let's go back to. Let me just show a video on the new administration. Shall I show you a video on this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right.
Ma'am,
Yes. If you have any
Ma'am, 2
questions,
minutes.
you can ask me right now. Yes, beta.
ma'am, sorry to interrupt, but Priyanshi has asked me to let her tell you to let her in, please.
Okay. Right now, only
she got
Sanat
this.
Kumar. Only Sanat Kumar is visible here. Some problem with the connectivity, I guess. Many students are trying to connect again and again. All right. I have
Yes, ma'am.
In this
admitted
module,
everyone.
you will learn about
Okay, let's just watch this video, and also I will show you the last part, what was happening around the world during the same time. At that particular time, slave trade was happening in South Africa. Okay, so which we have already, the Dutch trading ships reached the southern Africa in the 17th century, and they started taking these the black people there, and they captured them and made them slaves and took to their own homelands, where they were establishing the new they wanted workers for their plantations and industries. All right, let's watch this video now. Okay, now Priyanshi is still not there. Let's begin.
About the administrative and military reforms introduced by the East India Company. By 1857,
Is the video visible to all?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
about 63% of the Indian territories were under the direct control of the East India Company, and the rest of the territories under its indirect influence. In other words, the company literally had the whole of India under its control and had transformed itself from a small trading company to a colonial power. One of the key persons behind the expansion of the company power was Warren Hastings, the first Governor General. Under his administration, the company had gained control over 3 presidencies, or administrative units: Bengal,
Okay, children, he was the first Governor General, and before that, Robert Clive was the administrator, but he was not the Governor General. Let me tell you, 1764 is the year when the Battle of Buxar was won by the British East India Company, and after that, the Diwani of Bengal was transferred to the British. But at that time, a dual administration system was followed by the British, because they were not very well versed with the language and the system of administration in India. So 1773, Warren Hastings was the first Governor General of India.
Madras, and Bombay.
Please keep checking this map work also. I'm recording this video. I will be sharing it with you. The map work also is being explained in this video. So please observe this video very carefully.
He appointed a collector in each Indian district, who was responsible for collecting taxes and maintaining law and order. The collector's office, known as the Collectorate, soon became the center of power. Warren Hastings introduced reforms in the system of justice too. All districts were supposed to have a criminal court, or Faujdari Adalat, and a civil court, also known as the Diwani Adalat. Each criminal court was presided by a Qazi and a Mufti, who were Muslim jurists. However, they worked under the supervision of the district collector. The civil court, however, was directly presided over by a European district collector, who was assisted by Hindu Pandits and the Maulvis. To ensure uniformity in law, a digest of the Hindu laws was compiled in 1775, which was followed by a digest of Muslim laws in 1778. Apart from this, a Supreme Court and a Court of Appeal, the Sadr Nizamat Adalat, were also set up. The company realized that its real power lies in its military strength. So, along with administrative reforms,
Omkar, you were raising your hand. Just a minute, beta. Yes, Omkar, if you have a query, you can ask right now.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
it also introduced changes in its military culture too. The Mughal style of maintaining the military greatly influenced the company. The Mughal army was categorized into the cavalry and the infantry. The cavalry, or the Savars, were trained to fight.
You know the meaning of cavalry and infantry? What was cavalry and infantry? What is the difference?
Horsemen. And
Yeah, cavalry are soldiers on horses, and they were also known as sabars. And infantry is the pedal soldiers, okay, who used to walk and
foot.
yeah, on foot. Very good, foot soldiers.
Fight on horsebacks, whereas the infantry, or the foot soldiers, were trained in archery and the use of swords. The Mughals preferred to have more cavalry than infantry in their army. The 18th century saw a change in the military culture, with Mughal states like Benares and Awadh taking in peasants into their army and training them to become professional soldiers. The company also followed the same strategy and began recruiting peasants into their army, which came to be called the Sepoy Army. The British needed the infantry to fight against Burma, Egypt, and Afghanistan. They had to use advanced guns like muskets and matchlocks, and had to keep up with the changing military requirements. This led the company to recruit more infantry soldiers who could then be trained to use the latest warfare technologies. By the early 19th century, the company army was being subjected to European-style drills, discipline and training to create a uniform military culture. However, while building such a military force, community feelings and issues like caste were ignored, which led to a lot of unrest among the sepoys and culminated in the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857. You have now reached the end of the module on a new administration. In this module, you learnt that by 1857, the company had virtually complete control on India. Warren Hastings played an important role in the expansion of the company's power in India. Warren Hastings brought about many administrative reforms, especially in the sphere of justice. The company also made many changes to its military culture as well.
So now let's watch another video on the previous section quickly, which we were not able to watch last time.
In this module, you will learn about the strategies adopted by the company to expand its rule in India. The Battle of Plassey, fought in 1757, was a turning point for the East India Company, as it marked the start of its rule in India. Over the next century, the company annexed many Indian states, not by military attack alone, but also by using different well-thought-out strategies.
So here we are doing a recap also, okay, of all the policies followed by the British.
These maps show you the territorial expansion of the British power over a period of 100 years. It started with Bengal and a few states on the east coast and southern India. Soon their web spread to almost all of South India and parts of western, central, and northern India. By 1857, they virtually had the whole of India under their control. The strategies adopted by the British helped them annex the Indian kingdoms. Let's learn more about these strategies. In 1764, after the Battle of Buxar, the British decided to appoint residents in many of the Indian states. The residents were political or commercial agents used by the company to meddle in the internal affairs of the states. They began to decide the successor to the throne and other administrative posts. Another strategy introduced by the company was forcing a state into a subsidiary alliance. Under this strategy, an Indian ruler wasn't allowed to maintain independent armed forces and had to pay the company for the subsidiary forces it provided. If a ruler failed to pay up, a part of his territory was taken away. Only when the company felt a threat to its economic and political interests would it launch a direct military attack. Mysore was one such state that was annexed by a direct military attack. It was a powerful territory under the able rule of Hyder Ali and his son Tipu Sultan. Tipu Sultan stopped the export of spices from his kingdom and prevented the local merchants from trading with the company. He also maintained a close relationship with the French, who helped to modernize his troops. All this angered the British, and they fought a series of 4 wars, known as the Anglo-Mysore Wars, against these 2 rulers. And finally, in 1799, the company finally tasted victory in the war at Srirangapatnam. The Maratha kingdom was also annexed through a direct military attack. They fought a series of wars known as the Anglo-Maratha Wars, and by 1819 managed to gain control over the territories to the south of Vindhyas. Between 1830 and 1850, Afghanistan, Sindh and Punjab were also attacked by the company. It wanted to gain control over these territories, as it felt Russia might enter India through these states. Another policy introduced by the company to annex the Indian states was the policy of paramountcy. This policy was introduced by Lord Hastings, who was the first Governor-General of India from 1813 to 1823.
Okay, children, this rest of the recap will cover in the next class. This class is going to get over. Please write down any questions if you have any queries. We'll discuss this further if you have any doubts, and complete your work by 3rd of June. And so today's class will wind up now. And if you have any doubts about any other lessons, any other queries, please note them down in a notebook, and I will answer your queries in the next class. Tomorrow we have a class, Thursday. Okay, same time. All right.
Yes,
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, so now I am winding up, and you can leave the class now, children. It's time now.
Okay, ma'am. Bye.
Okay, ma'am.
Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Bye bye.